Mike Belsch just moved his $1.96 billion company 1,400 miles to escape a tax that doesn't even exist yet. He's not alone. BitGo is one of dozens fleeing California before a November vote on a 5% wealth tax, a tax retroactive to January 1st, 2026. Here's the math destroying California tech. One-time 5% tax means $50 million per billion in net worth. For the state's 255 billionaires, that's a $100 billion bill. Google's founders already moved LLCs to Florida. Peter Thiel relocated to Miami. Defense tech CEO Palmer Luckey warned, "One market correction and I am screwed for life." But here's the trap that makes this different from any tax you've ever seen. Mike Belsch runs BitGo from Palo Alto. 566 employees, $104 billion in assets. Going public this week at $1.96 billion valuation. He moved his headquarters paperwork to Sioux Falls, South Dakota in December. Not because he wants to, because staying one more day could have cost him everything. Why can't these billionaires simply pay the tax? Why can't these billionaires simply pay the tax? The law was announced in December 2025. It applies to January 1st, 2026. Pause. Anyone living in California on that date owes 5% of their total net worth. Not their income, their wealth. Palmer Luckey's worth comes from Anduril stock he can't sell. The company isn't public. No market, no buyers. But California will say it's worth $3.5 billion. His tax bill? $175 million. In cash. Due by April 2027. He doesn't have $175 million in cash. He'd have to sell company shares to pay. But there are no buyers for private shares at government valuations. This is the liquidity trap. Tax attorney Laura Zwicker calls California's franchise tax board audits the most invasive I have seen. They want data from all your devices, ATM withdrawals, Apple Pay charges, every way to prove you were in California on January 1st. But this creates an even bigger problem nobody's talking about. Founders would have to dump billions in stock, all at once, into markets that aren't ready. Stock prices would crash. 401ks would hemorrhage value. Entire companies could lose their founders overnight. So what happens when founders are forced to sell their companies?
Palmer Luckey made his fortune from Oculus, paid hundreds of millions in taxes on it, used the rest to start Anduril. 6,000 employees building defense technology. Now he and his co-founders need billions in cash they don't have. He posted on X, "One market correction, nationalization event, or prohibition of divestiture, not at all uncommon during wartime, and I am screwed for life." The state could seize his home, garnish his wages forever for a tax on wealth he can't access.
Jensen Huang has a different problem. He owns 3.8% of NVIDIA, worth $155 billion. But unlike most founders, he doesn't have supervoting shares. His 3.8% ownership equals 3.8% voting power. A 5% wealth tax means he owes $7.75 billion. To pay it, he'd sell stock, losing control bit by bit. Huang said he's perfectly fine with the tax. He hasn't thought about it even once. He can afford to lose $7.75 billion. Most founders can't. Larry Page, Google co-founder, worth $270 billion, moved 45 California LLCs out of state in December, bought a $72 million Miami mansion. His family office converted to Delaware. He left California before January 1st. Sergey Brin, the other Google founder, terminated 15 California LLCs, converted 7 to Nevada entities. Peter Thiel donated $3 million to fight the tax, opened a Miami office for Teal Capital, officially lists Florida as his base. Chamath Palihapitiya posted on January 1st, "Several of my billionaire acquaintances, together worth an estimated $500 billion, scrambled and left California for good yesterday. They're not threatening to leave. They already left." This started in July 2025. Congress passed H.R. 1, Trump's $1 trillion Medicaid reduction. California faces $30 billion annual healthcare cuts, maybe $100 billion over 5 years, hospitals closing, emergency rooms shutting down. But who decided billionaires should pay for Trump's cuts? SEIU-UHW, Service Employees International Union, United Healthcare Workers West, 120,000 healthcare workers. They drafted the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act. They chose the 5% rate. They picked January 1st, 2026 as the retroactive date. Suzanne Jimenez, their chief of staff, "Healthcare workers are going to the ballot to prevent California hospitals and emergency rooms from closing." Congressman Ro Khanna backed them. "It's a matter of values. We believe billionaires can pay a modest wealth tax, so working-class Californians have Medicaid." Here's what makes the retroactive date genius, or legally impossible. The residency determination is January 1st, 2026. The initiative was announced in October 2025. Voters don't decide until November 2026. They locked billionaires in before telling them the tax existed. Tax attorneys call it a due process violation, a wholly new tax without warning. The volatility problem. Bitcoin crashed 15% in 1 week this January. Tesla stock swings 5% daily. Startup valuations change based on who's valuing them. California says BitGo is worth $1.96 billion. Last year, it was $1.75 billion. That $210 million difference equals $10.5 million more in taxes. Who decides what a private company is worth? The state. California taxes crypto gains up to 13.3%. South Dakota, 0%. If 50 billionaires leave permanently, they take $200 billion in future tax revenue with them. Not from the wealth tax, from income tax they'll never pay again, from capital gains they'll realize elsewhere, from payroll taxes for companies they'll build in Florida. The California Legislative Analyst Office admits ongoing decreases in income tax revenues, potentially hundreds of millions per year. Engineers follow founders, VCs follow deals, startups follow capital. South Dakota has no income tax, no corporate tax, no capital gains tax. Nevada, Wyoming, Texas, Florida, they're all waiting. Bill Ackman called it expropriation of private property. Governor Newsom said it's really damaging and warned it would drive away investment. Newsom is a Democrat. He opposes this tax. Even he sees what's coming. Innovation ecosystems take 50 years to build. They can collapse in 5. Once Jensen Huang's engineers see better opportunities in Austin, once Palmer Luckey's defense contracts go to Texas suppliers, once Larry Page's next company launches in Miami, they're not coming back. So that's why Mike Belshi moved BitGo 1,400 miles. That's why Larry Page fled before January 1st. That's why Palmer Luckey is terrified. The retroactive date means moving now is too late for anyone who stayed, but staying means gambling your entire fortune on a November vote. This isn't really about a 5% tax. This is about whether states can retroactively seize wealth from a date before voters decided. If this passes, every state with billionaires will copy it. If it fails, California just created a $100 billion budget hole. If it reaches the Supreme Court, nobody knows what happens. Jensen Huang says he'll stay. Mike Belshi already left.